In light of the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa's remarks just a short moment ago, reaffirming support for the Constitution and the judiciary and distancing the ANC, it says itself, from a narrative that negates this. You'd recall, of course, the spectacle that had played out between statements that had come from the presidency as well as the tourism minister, Lindiwe Sisulu. Let's speak to Tshepo Matseba now, who's a managing director with the Reputation First Group. Mr. Matseba, a very good afternoon to you. Thanks indeed for your time. You're the expert here. Is this a PR nightmare? How does this public spat look for the general mass? I think especially when it comes from two very senior members of the same political party, where there's constant talk of unity and stability.
Good afternoon, Griselda, and thanks for the opportunity. So we characterized this work, or what has transpired in the last week or so, as a catastrophe in the area of communication. And that's because you have the highest office in the land, the presidency, engaging in an exchange with a minister member of cabinet. So in a way that is unbecoming, you have actually two senior executives of South Africa who represent South Africa both locally and internationally, one in tourism and one as the leader of the state. Even though he didn't pronounce himself initially directly, but there are statements that were written by the department that represents the office of the president, which really got engaged in a spat that should have completely been avoided had there been some basic principles of communication or protocols of communication observed, so that the president actually not exposed to this level. And I think it was completely unnecessary for things to get to this level.
I mean, how does this entire tit-for-tat spat fare for government's messaging? As one could argue, on the other hand, that Minister Lindiwe Sisulu's opinion piece is just that. It's her opinion. But she's also a senior member of cabinet, and this could be read by some as government's position.
Yeah, so I always say that you can't be when you play a role of a senior role such as a ministerial role, representing a country internationally as the Minister of Tourism. You can't be the minister today and when you get home you say, well, when I'm home I'm not a minister, I'm actually a mom and I'm also a private citizen. Because your opinions, no matter whether you are online or offline, actually matter. But that should not be read to mean that we should stifle freedom of expression and freedom of creativity, because that also is enshrined in our own constitution to protect the right of an individual to speak. While there may be issues in the article that one may disagree with, it's completely said. What saddens us the most, me specifically the most, is that people have shifted from the context and the substance, the substantive issues in the piece into the narrative, an emotional narrative about politics. And by the way, yes, we must accept also that the statement was also made within the context of the ANC's elective conference, what we call usually the silly season. And therefore, you don't expect the vehicle and such a high office as the presidency to be participating in that exchange. In fact, you want this exchange to happen within the ambits of literally House or the African National Congress.
I mean, what do such public spats do, for citizens' confidence in the direction which they see government, in particular in this case, taking? Because these were statements that had come from the presidency.
Well, the problem here is that the public loses trust in the credibility of the teams that are communicating on behalf of the president. And it also taints actually the image of that office in South Africa, but also around the world. Because people look at this and they're thinking, oh, well, it looks like members of parliament are having it a go. And that's easy to do this kind of thing in parliament. But it's very, very difficult to allow this kind of a situation to unfold when we are in the middle of the end of COVID-19 towards more of a economic recovery for South Africa. So it is, to be honest, it's difficult to talk about the subject because we're talking about the head of the state and a senior cabinet member.
Yeah.
But actually, it's embarrassing, to be quite honest, and actually degrading to the kind of work that is done to rebuild South Africa's economy, rebuild confidence with citizens, and rebuild trust among South Africans who are around the world.
Tshepo Matseba, thank you very much indeed for your insight. The Managing Director of Reputation First Group. Thanks for joining us.